Hello and welcome to another Minecraft video by me, FoxyNoTail, here in a super flat world where today we're going to be talking about villages and how to make villages and how villages work. What this isn't a video explaining or a tutorial on how to build an iron farm for the Bedrock Edition of Minecraft. It's not going to tell you the best way to build your iron farm or anything like that, but it is going to hopefully open your eyes to how all this works so that you can go off and then try and design an iron farm around the mechanics now that you understand the mechanics. And I just want to put a disclaimer out at this point in the video. I've been spending the last 3 days, literally 3 full days, working out these mechanics, and I'm still lost on a lot of them. There's a lot of weird stuff going on here that I'm putting down to bugs that maybe I just don't understand. Maybe there's another layer of mechanics I don't understand. But we're going to be doing a really deep dive into how it all works and how to sync villages up, how to create villages, the size of villages, basically everything to do with villages that I can find out. And we're going to start with, what is a village? What is a village? A village is no longer anything to do with doors. Bearing in mind we're on the Bedrock Edition of Minecraft, this has got nothing to do with the Java Edition. None of these things are relevant to the Java Edition. It's completely different for Bedrock, okay? So in order to make a village, all you need is 1 villager and 1 bed, and that is literally what the game then will classify as a village. So if I put a bed down there and put a villager next to it, that villager is going to connect to that bed. That is now a village. Now, in the game code, in the NBT data that we're going to look at later, that will actually show as a village. But because it's so close to this one, because we've got a villager here and a bed here, that's actually going to have merged into 1 village. They're not going to be separate ones, they're going to be 1 village. Now, workstations allow the villager to have a profession and to decide what type of villager he's going to be, but it's not actually going to affect the village in any way. The workstations have absolutely no bearing on the village at all. They just allow you to choose what traders you want to be trading with, basically. And then there's the bell. There's the bell. If I put that bell down there, hopefully it's going to get green sparkles on. Maybe, possibly. I'm still not sure with the bell. The bell is... This is where I get confused. The bell does actually act as a bed in certain circumstances. The bell should, when you place it down, define the centre of the village, but it only does it sometimes, and I don't know if it's to do with the number of villagers that are around, or if it's to do with they're detecting to this bell, look. So they are linking to that bell. So the bell is being linked to, and sometimes in the testing I've done, the bell will become the very centre of the village, but sometimes it's the bed. Sometimes it's the first bed you put down that gets linked to. Sometimes it's another bed at random. But there's lots and lots of weird mechanics going here. Let's jump into the first testing world I did and let's see if we can go through them one by one. Okay, so this is my little test world that I started all of this stuff in, and we've got a few little bits and bobs going on here. We've got some command blocks that basically will... Whenever an iron golem spawns, it's going to place a piece of white concrete underneath them and kill the iron golem. And whenever a cat spawns, it's going to place a piece of black concrete underneath them and kill the cat. And that way we can see where things are spawning around our villages. Now I've got 4 different locations that are each 1,000 blocks from here in either direction. First of all, we're going to go to the blue area, which is where I started all of these tests. And this is what we've got in the blue area. Now, if I hover above here, you can see we've got the villagers down there in a little pod. We've got a row of beds here, which is actually creating a bigger village. And then we've got 3 bells, and you can see some black marks on the floor. Now, if we hover above here for a couple of minutes, you'll see, or you should be able to see, where things start spawning. You've got a cat next to the bell on the bottom right that's spawning down there next to that bell. It's not going to die, though, because it needs to move before the game will actually detect it and kill it. There we go. Got another cat spawned there. Got another cat spawned there. So at the moment, all of the spawning is going on around this bell here. So basically, for this test, I took a chunk, I put the villagers outside the chunk, I linked them to a bed that was in the centre of the chunk on these 2 blocks here. Then I put a bell down, they linked to that, and then I filled the area up with beds like this so that they would link to the beds. Now, if we go and look at the MBT data, we can find out exactly where the village centre is on this. And the program I'm going to use for that is Universal Minecraft Editor. It doesn't, MC Tool Chest doesn't give you the information you need, but if you open up your world in this program and click View Files and then Database, you'll see here we've got a list of all the villages in the world. Each village has 4 sections for the village. So we've got one called dwellers, which lists any of the villagers in there. So these are all listings for actual villagers in the village. We've got one for cats down here. This is how many cats are in the village. We've got one for iron golems, and we've got one I don't know. I'm assuming that's for wandering traders, but I'm not 100% sure. And then we've got one called Village Info, which tells you, has the village been initialized? We've got some random numbers here that are the same for every single village I've seen. And then we've got the coordinates of the actual 2 boundary corners of the village. We've also got something called an M tick and a tick, which the tick is how long the village has been alive for. The M tick, I'm still yet to work out what that means. Then we've got players, and we've got entries for the players that are in the village. And then we've got points of interest, or POI, which again just shows you what villagers are in the actual village. So it's a bit weird. This is the one we're interested in at the moment. This one actually shows us where the village boundaries are, and we can find the center of the village from that. Now you can see there are a lot of villages in the world we're currently looking at, and we actually need to find one that's in the positive 1000 by 1000 in order to find our village. So let's go through each of these info ones until we get X0 and X1 positive and Z0 and Z1 in the positive. They don't go in order. They're completely randomly assigned these identifying things, so they don't go in order, so it's very difficult to actually keep coming back to this and finding the village you want. Okay, this here shows that this is a village of roughly the right coordinates. If we look at the dwellers here, we can see there's 29 actors, or they're 29 villagers, and we've got 1 cat that's currently there as well. So let's grab the information for that and let's put it in a spreadsheet. Okay, so I made this spreadsheet that allows me to find the village center very easily. What I've done is I've taken the X0 and X1 numbers, I've put those there. I've taken the Y0 and Y1 numbers and put them there, and the Z0 and Z1 numbers and put them there. Now that uses a little bit of maths to determine how big the village is on the X, how big it is on the Z, and how big it is on the Y. And when you create a village, they're all always 64 by 64 by 24 blocks high. And we'll look at that in a little while. And then the village center is on these blocks here. So that automatically generates me this command here, which I can copy, go back to the game, and then when I put that command in the game there, it will put a block above the block that is currently determined as the village center. So you can see at the moment, this village believes that this bell is the center of the village. So let's get rid of that bell, and let's get rid of that bell, and you'll see some of the villages have disconnected from those ones, and that should still be the village center. So at the moment, forgetting the fact that they've got all of these beds that they can connect to, which they are connected to, it's decided that the actual center of the village is this bell. Now, if I get a bell and I break that one, the village center will now move to a random bed. Now, I don't know which bed it's going to move to. Sometimes it's the one closest to them. Sometimes it's the one that they chose last. It's completely bizarre which one it chooses, and I don't know. So we can go back into our program and find out. Right, okay, so we need to reload the world. We don't have to close it. We can keep the world actually open while we're doing this. We need to reload it, and we need to figure out what village it was again that we were looking at and see if it's changed. Okay, I've found the village again, and you can see things have moved. So the village center is now completely shifted. Let's put in the new coordinates that it's given us for the boundaries of the village, and let's see where the center is now. So let's copy that command. Let's open Minecraft back up. And we paste that command in there, and now this bed is the center of the village, which is bizarre. Don't know why it's picked that bed, other than maybe that was the first bed that the villager connected to. The villagers do all have their own unique numbering system, so maybe it's whichever villager it decided is the main villager that gets it's his bed becomes the center. But we're going to leave that for now. And we're going to pop the bell down over here, and let's see if we shift the center of the village over here. So let's put that down there. They should connect to it. Now, villagers will only connect to something that's within 16 blocks of them. So if I put something over here, they're not going to be able to detect it. So let's actually just break that bell a second, and let's put that there instead. They can't detect that. Even though it's actually within the boundaries of the village is 64 blocks wide by 64 blocks that way by 24 blocks high. It is within the boundaries of the village, but they can't see it because it's too far away from them. If I was to add another villager in over here, it would be able to detect it, and it would expand the village this way. So they can't see that there, so let's put it within 16 blocks. Let's put it down there. They're going to connect to that. We'll give it a couple of seconds, then we'll load up that program again and see if the center of the village is shifted again. Now, interestingly enough, the centre of the village hasn't changed this time, but I did notice that the Y values have actually changed on this. I didn't check the last time round, so we might actually have a different bed that's the centre. So let's jump back to the game. Let's run that command again, and let's see. Yeah, it's actually not that bed that's the centre at all. It's this one here. So if I break that bed, the centre's going to shift again, and I don't know where it's going to go to, but we're going to find out. Right, okay, now it's completely shifted. So now we're at 984 by 1048 by -8 by 16 by 967 by 1031. And let's have a see which one's the centre of the village now. So now the bell's the centre again. So now the bell has decided that the bell is the centre of the village. So can you see that this doesn't make any sense? It doesn't make sense which one it decides is more important priority-wise. Now, I think it might have to do with the location of the village. Maybe this direction, it prefers to that direction. But in all the tests I've doing, it's inconsistent. Sometimes the bell never ever becomes the centre of the village. Sometimes it does. Sometimes a bed, depending on which side of the village it's on, will be detected. But there we go. Look, we got an iron golem spawning within around this. So the next thing I guess to say is that where will things spawn? Things won't spawn in the entire village. The entire village actually takes up 4 chunks by 4 chunks. So if we look at our floor in front of us, the centre is over here. So we're looking at these 4 chunks. This area here is where the village is, but the things will only spawn within a 16 block square of the centre of the village. Now, the centre of the village is pretty much in the centre of this chunk, so it looks like they're just limited to this chunk, but they're not. If we move that actual village centre over here instead, let's break it. It's probably going to go back to a bed now, but let's say we put it there. Can they see it from there? They can't quite see that there. Put it there. Yeah, there we go. And change the centre again. It is surrounded by that. It's not chunk aligned where they'll spawn. It is surrounded by the centre of the village. Now, let's see where the centre is now. Okay, I've done all the maths. I'm going to put the command in to see where the village centre is. Oh, and it's back over this bell. So the bell, shifting the bell has created the new village centre. So things are now going to spawn around this. 8 blocks that way, 8 blocks that way, 8 blocks that way, 8 blocks that way. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that way, 8 that way, 8 that way, and 8 that way. Now, the area between that should be the only area that cats and golems can actually spawn in. They shouldn't be able to go more than that. It is, from all the testing I've done, it is, well, 17 by 17 that they can spawn. So 8 blocks in either direction around that bell. So we shouldn't see anything spawning outside of that blue area. In terms of cats and golems, at least, anyway. Obviously, passive animals and other things can spawn there. But the wandering trader should also spawn in there as well at the very centre if they decide to spawn. See, we got a cat spawn on the very edge there. Okay, so we've discovered in this particular setup that the bell actually takes priority over the village centre, and moving the bell in this village actually will declare where the new centre is. So the bell is in a northeasterly direction away from the villagers, so that might have something to do with it. I don't know. It could be to do with the fact that we're in the positive coordinates from the world centre. I really don't know why the bell gets priority in this over the beds. The other thing is, if I add more beds in, as much as some villagers will actually connect to it, they'll decide that that's their bell, it doesn't actually affect the village centre. I can put all of these bells down here, but the centre of the village is only going to go round one of them. The centre won't go in between them all. The village can only have one centre point. Right, we're going to come out of this now, and we're going to go into the next set of testing that I did and have a look at something else. Okay, so the next set of tests I did were inside the red area, and in this one I wanted to see if I could actually create a bedless village just using bells, and the answer is no, you can't. A villager will only detect a bell once a bed has been detected, so we've got a similar thing going on here, but this time the village centre is actually over the pillar of this bed. So this was the first bed that was detected by the villagers, and that became the centre, and moving the bell on this one doesn't seem to help. So if we look at that, that's the east over there, so north is that way. If we take that bell there and move it northeast this way, although they can't see it there because it's too far away, but that won't move the centre. Let's put it there. No one's going to connect to it because there's too many more bells. Let's get rid of all the other bells. Right, okay, I've moved the bell. I've got rid of all the rest of them. They're connecting to it now. We'll give it a couple of minutes and then we'll look at the data for this one and see where this one is. Okay, so this village is at minus 1011 by minus 947 by 946 by 1010. So let's grab our function. So now the village centre is actually above that bell, which is weird because when I did this test earlier, the bell made no difference to this village, but it seems that these guys like the bell being in that direction as well. So let's see. Let's get rid of that bell a second, and let's move that bell. Let's move that as well so we don't get confused with that. Let's move the bell this way and see if that then becomes the centre of the village, because this is bizarre. This is different from what I got yesterday. Reload our data. Find the same village. Well, it looks very much like the village centre has followed that bell. There it is. So, okay, this is absolutely bizarre. I literally spent hours and hours doing this yesterday and got completely different results. So it just shows you that the game doesn't really know what's going on either. But there we go. Moving the bell in these particular circumstances moves the centre of the village, and you'll now see things spawning around this bell in the 17 by 17 area. Great. Let's move to the next area. Alright, so we're in the green area now. In this particular test, what I wanted to do is raise the whole village up off the floor, so we were limiting the spawns to these platforms. Find out what the actual boundaries of the village are. So that's the very bottom corner of this village, and that green block up there is the very top corner of this village. And then work out what platforms I could actually get things to spawn on. So I started making these platforms up high, and I worked all my way down, all the way down low. And basically, I wanted to see how many platforms worth of iron golem spawning space we could get. And it turns out there's 2. So things will spawn, I think, 1 block higher than this from memory. So 1 block above where the village is registered and up to 3 blocks below where the village is registered. Now, we've got a bell here again, but I don't know if that's the centre. So let's do a village centre check on this one. Okay, there we go. I've got the coordinates for the centre of the village. Let's put those into the game. And let's see. So the bell, again, at this one, is the centre of the village. So we know things will spawn around that bell. Now, they will spawn on both platforms. And this platform is 3 high. So it's technically deep enough to spawn an iron golem. But I've never had, as you can see from the colours of the black spots on this one, I've never actually had any iron golems spawning on here. Okay, so let's run some commands and see how high we can get things to spawn on this one. So I'm going to get rid of both of these platforms. I'm going to start making platforms above and see where we get things actually starting to spawn on the platforms. Okay, I've just about got rid of both of those platforms. Now, I did break the bell by mistake. I've put another one down, so let's just check that that is actually still the centre of the village before we carry on with this. Otherwise, that's going to throw everything out. Now, it looks like the centre's shifted quite substantially from those coordinates, so let's just have a look. Let's put those in, and yeah, the centre of the village is now over that bed there. So sometimes this happens where the centre of the village shifts back to the closest bed towards the villagers. Sometimes it's a random bed. Yeah, it's so bizarre. So let's just, I tell you what, let's just cover up all of these bed pillows like that, and I think maybe that might prevent them from being detected as the centre of the village. I don't know. Let's break that bed that they've decided they want for being the village centre, and let's just put another couple of beds down that we broke. Now let's see where the village centre is. Yes, the village centre is back at that bell. That's great news. That's really good news. So now what I'm going to do is add loads of platforms in. Okay, so the village centre is actually at 31 high. So it doesn't matter where the villagers are. It doesn't matter where the beds are. It matters where the village centre is. And now that's at 31 in the world. So I'm going to add the first platform in 4 blocks above that at 35 high, or 35 on the Y coordinate. So let's add that in there like that, and let's see if we get anything spawning on that. Now, I know it's not going to because it's too high above the bell, but we'll just, for the sake of testing, we'll do this. I'll give it a couple of minutes and we'll see that nothing will spawn on there. And nothing has spawned, so let's get rid of that like so. Now I'm going to add another platform in 1 block lower down than that, and you'll see again, even though it's relatively close to the bell, nothing will spawn on that. You get no golems and no cats spawning on that because it's still too high up. Bringing the whole thing another 1 block down, we see we got a cat spawning on the actual block that the bell sat on, but not anywhere else. Now we've got the platform another 1 block down. We did get a cat spawning on this bell block, and we even got them spawning on these, but we're not going to get any on that. It's still, even though it's almost touching the bell, it's still too high up for anything to actually spawn on it in terms of cats or golems. So let's get rid of it. Now we're going to add one in at 1 block above the bell, and we should see things spawning on this platform at this level. This should be the highest anything will spawn, and there we go. Look, already we've got a cat spawning on that platform. So from my testing, this, I believe, is the lowest we can get before things start spawning. Things should spawn at that level there that I'm placing blocks at, but we're 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks down from the center. Nothing should spawn on this platform. We're getting cats up here. We don't want you up here because you're affecting things. Go away. Yeah, so we're getting nothing spawning on that. They would prefer to spawn on those blocks that were actually the one that the bell's on, or the ones above the bed. So let's move this up by 1 block. And now we should actually get things spawning on that platform now at that level. Okay, it seems that actually moving those blocks above the beds has shifted the center again back to that bed over here. So I think the beds will register if they've got a block over them. This is new. This is all new information, but they don't seem to actually act as the village when they've got a block over them. Let's put blocks back above these, and let's see if we can shift the center back to that bell then, and whether I can do that without actually breaking the bell, because that could be a way that we can actually guarantee the center of these villages. But yeah, you can see cats are spawning on that platform. So that's the lowest down things will spawn, and the highest up is 1 block above. So that is the range of where you can get things to spawn around your village center. Okay, looking at the data, putting those blocks above the beds hasn't shifted the center. So let's break the bell and put another one down there. And now let's see if that becomes the center, because the beds have got blocks over the pillows. No, the center is still over that bed, so I don't know. It's weird. The center's decided it's over, yeah, this bed now. So things are only going to spawn in a 17 by 17 area around that. I don't know why. I don't get it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We can look at the sun again and decide that this is the northeast area. So maybe if we was to drag these over here this way and get rid of that bell there and pop one over here, maybe this is going to take priority. No, for whatever reason, it still thinks that the center of the village is where that green block is there. It thinks that that bed is the center. We can potentially put the bell back there and then break that bed again, and then see if that shifts the center that way. I really don't know at this point how we manipulate the center effectively once you've messed it up effectively. Well, we might be onto a winner here. Let's put the new command in. Yes, we've moved the center back to the bell. So it appears then, by putting blocks over the pillows and then breaking them, and when you've got something without a block over it, that becomes the center. Possibly. Don't quote me on it, okay? I don't know. It keeps changing its mind. Anyway, let's move on to the next area. Now we've determined where the spawning platforms can be. Okay, I'm not going to lie, the next area is a big mess. This is a huge mess through here, but I'm going to do my best to try and explain it to you. Yeah, there's a lot going on here. So, before you get too carried away with all these platforms, let's look here. We've got a village. We've got lots and lots of villages inside that village, and the village centre of that village was, I don't think it still is, but it was above that bed there. It wasn't above the bell, it was above the bed, which meant that this boundaries here, these blue, red and green lines were the borders for that village. So this gives you an idea of how big one village is on its own. And you think, oh look, this village is 24 blocks high. So if we go up high enough in the sky and add in a second village and even a third village, we can stack villages above each other. And that's what I thought was going to happen anyway. It turns out that doesn't happen. So although a villager can only detect a bed if it's within 16 blocks of itself, if you create another village, i.e. one more bed and one more villager above the boundaries of that village, they will join. They become one big village rather than two separate villages. So that village there combined with this village here and combined with that village there to make one giant village. You don't get any more spawns, and because it's such a giant village, the boundaries go all the way up there, all the way to down there. The center point are these platforms here, and this is where we're going to get things spawning. We won't get anything spawning on any of those layers. We won't get anything spawning on any of those layers. We'll only get things spawning around the center two platforms, as we discovered from our last test in the last area of this world. They'll only do it over two platforms, and it's these ones here. Now, I did find out doing this that I can actually stack villages inside each other, but it's not what you're expecting from what you know from Java Edition or stacking iron farms. But we'll have a look at that in a little bit. For now, we want to look at how close together we can get villages without them combining into one big village. It's pointless having them combine into one big village because you will still only get one iron golem and a bunch of cats from it. So let's come away from this. Let's go over here and let's look at all of these floaty blocks over in this direction. Here we have a village. We've got 2 villagers, 1 bed, and above that bed we've got a campfire. And that campfire is just so that I can see this bed and see when this village is actually activating. Because a campfire, you can only see the smoke rising from a campfire when you are within, or basically when it's within your simulation distance. So if I come back here, it stopped rising. I can't see it anymore. If I go just past that line there, I should see that smoke start to rise again. There we go, look. So that's one village. The village borders are these green blocks here, and I've indicated on the floor where that is. So because I've got the center of the village right on the corner of that chunk there, it's almost perfectly chunk aligned that village to 4 chunks by 4 chunks. So I thought, okay, I should be able to get another village then that lines up with that one so that the next village border will touch there. I thought I would be able to do that. And in order to do that, I would have had to put the next village actual center here on this block. But I tried that and it combined into one big village. It turns out that you actually have to have horizontally away from the next village 2 chunks in between the borders. So now if we have the border of this village up there, any closer to that border, they will merge into one big village. But if I stand somewhere along this line here, I should be able to see that village activating and that village activating at the same time. But if I move this village any closer, even 1 block closer, if I put the bed there instead of where it is, that village will combine with that one to make one big village, and therefore you're not going to get 2 lots of iron golems spawning. I thought maybe I could offset it backwards in this direction and add another village this way, but you can't get it close enough to actually fire up all 3 villages at the same time. I've added this one here, but it doesn't matter where I stand, I can't get that village and that village and that village to all activate at the same time. I've got those 2 going, look, at the same time because the campfire smoke is rising, but I can't get this one over here as well as that one, sadly. That one's stopped now, I've moved over here, and so's that one. So yeah, you can only get 2 villages from all the testing I've done side by side within the same ticking area. So we would get, if we had enough beds at each of these, we would get iron golems spawning at both of these. And that's exactly what I did over here. So I then created 2 villages. Now look at all this. Wow, look at all the cats we've got all over the floor. I made a bit of a mess here doing some AFK work. Right, so we've got this village here, which has got a bed with a block over it with the village centre, and we've got a bunch of villagers here, and all the beds behind them are basically there's enough beds for it to start spawning cats and iron golems, and they should spawn in this platform and end up in the lava. You can see a cat spawn there, but we've still got the command blocks on that kills them. So let's go turn those command blocks off, and then we should actually be able to see this thing working. The problem with this is my platform is actually slightly too small. Although this is the same platform you might have seen in other people's videos like Silent Whispers, it's actually too small. It needs to be 1 block bigger that way and that way so that you don't get cats and iron golems spawning on the edges there. If you get cats spawning on the edge, they will fall off. They'll end up down here, not in the lava, and then you've got a big problem because once you've reached the cat cap, you will struggle to get iron golems or cats spawning, which is a little bit annoying. And the cat cap is all related to how many beds you've got, and we're going to go through that in a minute. But first of all, let's have a look at these. We've got cats spawning in there, and hopefully we've got things spawning over in this one as well. Well, same thing. The platform on this one is too small. The centre of the village should be over that bed there and not over these ones here, and we should get things spawning in there, but it's not looking ever so promising, to be honest, so we might have broken that one. But the fact is, we've got iron in there. We've got a couple of stacks of iron in there from a few hours of AFK. Now, it wasn't quick. It was about 4 hours worth of AFK, and then we've got some iron in there. We've got a stack and a half in there as well. And if you stand right in the centre of these 2 farms, so let's find the centre point there, and it's easiest to do that by flying up. We stand in the centre, both of those will be loaded, and you will get iron golems spawning at both of them at the same time. So that shows it is possible in Bedrock Edition to load 2 iron golem farms at the same time. But it's so slow spawning golems anyway, there's really not much point. Right, before we go on to a different area then, I just want to say that if you build this type of iron farm and you expect it to work without making sure that your center point is above that hole, it is possible to get spawns on it because it's above the floor. It's the only area things will spawn. Let's say we got rid of that bed and one of these beds became the village center. Technically, some of this would be close enough to the actual center of the village to spawn golems on. So in Silent Whisper's design, for instance, on his channel, he had the beds all running down underneath the platform and then the villagers in one corner. Now that's absolutely fine, but it will mean that his center of his village isn't directly over the center of the hole, so he'll only actually be using a portion of the spawning platform to spawn anything in, which means it's not very efficient. Now it's not Silent's fault because of that. That's just how the game works. But by manipulating where the village center is, we can then make sure that we get the full area of the spawning platform actually used for spawning, which increases the chances of spawning. Now there is one more issue with all of this. You might be thinking, oh yeah, this is all really good information. If I make sure the village centre's right above the hole and then put the platform underneath that, it's all going to be hunky-dory. No, I'm afraid not. I'm afraid not. Let's turn it to nighttime. Okay, so we've turned it to midnight. And now you can see, we've got a guy in golem spawn there. That bed got bad particles on it. These beds have got bad particles on it. The villagers are not happy because they can't get to their beds. So what they're actually doing is they're desynchronizing from their beds. They're desynchronizing from their beds and trying to resynchronize to another bed, but they can't because it's nighttime. And what does this mean? It means the village centre moves. The village centre moves because the beds are being registered, then re-registered, and they keep shifting about. We're getting green sparkles, and then we get disconnects. So yeah, the village centre is completely shifting all the time that it's nighttime, and it doesn't come back again in the morning. But let's try our new trick of blocking up the pillows on these beds, and let's see if then in the village centre will shift back to where we want it, because in my testing you just lose the village centre and you never get it back again. After one night of having your iron farm working, it just stops dead. So we've blocked those off. Let's see where the village centre is now. Okay, we've got the coordinates of our iron farm there. Hopefully if we put these in the game, it's going to be over that centre point there. It is. So we now, wow, okay, by blocking up the beds over here, we are managing to maintain a village centre. Oh, I'm learning things today. We might actually be able to do this. We might actually be able to stack villages properly then, which leads me on to the next thing of actually stacking villages. Let's see if we can do some village stacking. Goodness. Right, okay, I'll show you how it all works. Hang on, before we go, I just want to point out that we are getting a lot of cats spawning in this thing. I don't know why, because it's nighttime. It's ridiculous. There's one cat after another on this. It's absolutely crazy. Okay, ignore that horrible mess for a second and ignore that horrible mess down there, which we've got over here. Let's learn how to stack villages in the Bedrock Edition of Minecraft. And let's hope that with the knowledge that we've got today from village centre manipulation, we can actually make that work in our favour. So, let's come right out the way of all of these things. Let's get as far away from those things as we can. Let's come over here and let's get a little area to keep our villagers in with some glass. Okay, so we've got a villager in our little glass box there. Over here, I'm going to place a bed. This is hopefully going to be our village centre. He should connect to that, but he's a nitwit. And nitwits are a bit useless. They don't really tend to actually... Oh, there we go. He finally connected to it. And I'm also going to put a bell down next to that as well. So let's have the bell. Let's see if that becomes our centre. Now, he's already fallen out with that bed for whatever reason, but we don't care about that right now. What we care about at this particular moment in time is how we stack villages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place glass like this in 7 away from this. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to place beds along each of those like that. So there's 7 beds there. And then there's 7 beds on that row there. And then there are 7 beds on that row there. And then let's do what we did earlier and put blocks above the pillows and see if this actually helps. Right, okay, so what we got now is we've got a village with 1 bed here, 21 beds there, 1 villager and a bell. So this is classed as a village, and because we've only got 1 villager, it's not going to do a great deal. So let's chuck another villager in there, and let's give them some carrots, and they can start breeding, and they're going to breed to actually match up with the number of beds that there are available. Let's move away from that village a second. Every 4 beds you have in a village, so 1, 2, 3, 4, that will give you 1 cat spawn. So cats will spawn every 4 beds, providing that you've got enough villagers. Now, cats can actually create villagers all on their own, which is a completely different thing that we'll talk about in a minute. Let me just elaborate on that. See this one we've got over here? Now, this we had 89 villagers in and loads of beds, and it's stacked. It actually said there were 8 different villages here with 8 different village centres, but all of the villagers were actually listed as being in one village, and the rest of the villages just contained cats, which meant that they didn't spawn things like extra cats and extra golems. So stacking those villages that way didn't really help us. So anyway, coming back to this, we got 4 beds here. That would be enough for 1 cat. 8 beds is enough for 2 cat. 12 beds enough for 3 cats, and you get the picture. 21 beds is enough for an iron golem, but you also need a bunch of villagers as well. So they've bred, they've had 1 baby. Let's chuck a few in there extra just to sort of boost the numbers up a bit and get this thing moving without having to wait for them all day. And we should see things starting to spawn now. Now, you might notice that things are spawning and disappearing. I've actually got a command block system set up to, make everything disappear out the way so that we can see what's going on. But we don't have what we had before, where we've got the black marks on the floor. So nothing's actually spawning at this particular moment in time. I'm not 100% sure why. Right, I wasn't expecting that. We've had no cat spawn here, but we've just spawned 1 iron golem in. So what I want to do now is I want to show you the code that shows what things we've got spawned in the area. So let's hop back into that editing program and let's have a look at what's going on. So loading the world up and going into the database, the village we're going to be looking at starts with 22F. So this is the info of the village, where the village is. If we come to look at the dwellers of the village, we can see we've got 22 villagers at the village. We've got 5 cats at the village. Now, can you see these cats have got a high TS number? That means the cats aren't at the village. From what I can understand, that is like a timer, that the further away the cats go from the village, the higher that timer goes up, and eventually it will say, actually, there's no cats there, let's get rid of it. So we didn't see any cats there. There's no cats hanging about at the village. We can't see any cats anywhere near it. Basically, that's saying the villagers lost the cats. And once they get up to around about 25,000, those numbers, they will deregister those cats and they'll try and spawn some more. It's basically like a check to see, are the cats still there? If not, let's have some more, but let's not spawn them just in case they've wandered off and they come back again. Right, reloading it then, we can see that the cat timers have gone up even higher now. These are all increasing, and we've got one here, the second one down, which has got 1 in. This is the iron golem. Now, he hasn't got a very high number because he's still relatively close to the centre of the village. He's not wandered off too far, or at least he hadn't when I'd done that. So the village can still see him. When he goes outside of the area the village can see, that number will go up and up and up and up and up and up until the game decides he's lost, and then it will try and spawn another one in. If the villagers see, not physically, it doesn't matter whether they can actually see it, but if that iron golem is killed within range of the village, that number will disappear and it will start again. So same with cats. So if we was to get this iron golem on a lead, let's take him on a lead and let's drag him over here, right out the way of that village. Come on. So we're going out of the boundaries of that village now. Let's pop a fence down and stick him on that fence. Now, if we go look at the data now, it should still show that there is an iron golem in the village, but its number will be going up because it's too far away. So yeah, it's still showing there is an iron golem, and can you see the TS number is going up, 278, because it's further away. And same thing with the cats. Look, the cat numbers are all going up still because the cats are still effectively lost. I'm leaving the game running in the background. Let's load this up again while the game's running in the background and see if those numbers have changed. So we're looking at that village, we're looking at dwellers, and the number's gone up again. Look, the iron golem number's gone up because he's too far away from the village. Now, because he's so far away from the village, and the villagers didn't see him die, they're not going to actually respawn another golem because they still think he exists. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we kill the cats and the iron golems in view of the villagers, so that they can then decide that they've definitely gone and they can spawn another one in. And I know this sounds really weird, and I know it seems maybe even a little bit obvious, but if you've got an iron farm that cats can spawn and fall off the edge of, if they're all sitting around on the floor near it, the villagers aren't going to see the cats or the iron golems die if they fall off the edge, and they're not going to spawn new ones, which is going to ruin your rates. So let's then fence post him here, like that. He's now in the center, and then we're going to look back at the data again and see that his numbers should have gone down now. Here we go. This is his entry here, and his number's back down to 56. So that basically means he's close enough for the villagers to be able to see him. Now, if we accidentally on purpose get rid of him with a bit of lava, there we go, he's gone. Now, the villagers will have seen him die because it happened close enough to the villagers for them to register it. So now if we go back to that file and we reload it, we should hopefully see that the iron golem entity is completely gone, which means that the village can then try and spawn another one at some point when it deems that's a good idea. So there we go, look, the iron golem entry is gone. There's nothing there, it's not detecting anything. We've still got the 5 lost cats, which the numbers are going up really high for. They're all in the 10,000s, look, nearly. So they will get to about 25,000, then the game will go, we've lost those cats, and start spawning another one. But the iron golem, because we killed it in the area, the game can now spawn another one if it chooses to, but it is a long time in choosing when to actually do it. Now, I said we were going to talk about stacking villages over this one, and let's do that. Let's actually work out how we stack a village then. So we discovered that every 21 beds is enough beds to actually spawn in an iron golem. Now let's add an absolute load more beds into this and see what happens. Right, I've added another 21 beds there, and I've added another 21 beds there. Now you can see we've got some cats spawning because the cat cap has increased. Look, and another iron golem. We've got loads of stuff spawning because we've got so many beds. Now, they're not in the centre of the village. Let's chuck a few more villages in here just to actually increase the number of villages we've got for the number of beds. I don't know how many we're going to have in there, but there we go. Got a ton of villages in there. Now let's go look at the data and see what's happening in terms of the villages. Okay, so we've got our original village, which I'm just going to write down the number to so I can find it again next time. The centre hasn't moved on that one, but we should find that we've got more villages. Yeah, we've got another one here, look. Another one here. Okay, so in that area, we've now got 3 villages. We've got this one here, which is starts with 22F. We've got this one here, which starts with 47F. And then we've got 929, which is this one here. Now, these are all 3 different villages. And let's find the centres of each one of those in the game to see where the centres are. Oh, we've got another iron golem over there, look. Now, with these commands, I'm actually going to increase where the block comes by 3 blocks so that it doesn't interfere with our beds. Our original village centre is still where we left it. We've also got a new village centre there, which is above that bed. And we've got another village centre over there, which is above that bed. So we've now got 3 village centres and 3 villages that could potentially spawn golems and cats. But I say that, I'm pretty sure that this village will contain all the villagers, and those 2 villages will just contain cats. So let's have a look at the code and find out. Okay, so our original village, we've got 27 villagers in there. We've got 1 iron golem, and we've got 8 cats. If we go to look at our second village, we've got no villagers. We've got 1 iron golem spawned, even though there's no villagers at it, and we've got no cats. And if we go to our last village, which is this one here, we've got 51 villagers at that one and 6 cats. So, yeah, it's a bit weird. It's inconsistent, and the problem is we can't shift the village centres of the other 2 villages, or I haven't been able to in testing, over to our bell. Let's just shift those, or let's put blocks over those again, and let's maybe add another couple of bells over here and see if we can get people actually, the centres of these villages moved, because it would be really nice if we could get the centres of all those villages there, because then we can get more golems. Well, we have managed to move the coordinates of one of the villages, but I don't think it's over where we wanted it to be. Let's just try it. Yeah, no, it's just changed beds. So we've still got random village centres, but we could make an absolute giant platform around this thing and push things off in each of the different directions, a little bit like what I was trying to do with this up here. So the idea with this sort of UFO looking thing is that each of these edges would have beds coming out all the way along, and then we're restricting the spawning area to basically push them out from the center and drop them over the edge. Now, I'm not going to claim at any point in this video that I know the most effective way to make these villages spawn lots of golems or the best way of doing it. I'm just giving you the knowledge so that you can then go off and design your iron farms knowing how the code works and how the mechanics works. We know that a bell or a bed can be the village center. We know we can manipulate the center of a village by moving the bed and the bells. We know that it takes 4 beds to create 1 cat. We know that if a cat wanders off rather than being killed, it won't spawn another one in for a very long time. We know the same for a golem, but a golem needs 21 beds. We know if we have more than 21 beds, we end up being classed as a second village. We know lots and lots of things, but in all of that stuff, it doesn't really help us massively in creating very good iron farms unless, I think the only way to do it is to do basically what we've done here, stack villages, stack loads and loads and loads of them, and just have an absolutely massive spawning platform up in the sky somewhere and make sure that you kill all of the cats and all of the golems so that you don't keep losing that cap because the village thinks those things have wandered off. So anyway, that is it from me. That is everything I've learned. Hopefully you understood some of that. I'm sorry this was very technical. I'm sorry it was very boring, but we need to know how these things work, and I think I've probably helped a few people out there, at least I hope I have. If you know anything that I don't, or if you've figured anything out that I've missed, please do let me know and I can do an update to this video at some point. And if you found this helpful in building your iron farms, then also please let me know. My one last tip for you is if you want a fast and decent source of iron in the Bedrock Edition of Minecraft, build a pillager raid farm and smelt all of the iron drops that you get from it. That's going to be tons faster than it is actually trying to build an iron golem farm like we used to. So anyway, that's enough from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, do please leave a like. If you haven't already, please do subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!